everybody who's sitting here and everybody who's sitting out in the cafe this morning. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and happy Father's Day. This is great that you guys are here. Hey, can I tell my own Father's Day joke, my own bad Father's Day joke? Can I tell you that? Okay, it's a knock-knock joke, so you guys are you're gonna have to follow me, okay? Knock, knock. Interrupting cow. Moo! Second service didn't like it either. I don't know if you know this about me, but I am a sucker for a gas station car wash. I don't know why. I don't know why it is. If you want to look at my car, here's a picture of my car right here. My car ain't nothing but a beat-up old Honda Accord with 165,000 miles on it. So a summer's rain will go make that thing look better. And so when I, go to the car, but for some reason, whenever I go to the car wash, I always feel like upgrading that car wash. That thing right there only needs the cheapest, the most basic car wash that there is. But for some reason, every time I pull up to that little R2 unit, like every time I pull up, I always feel like upgrading it. But let me ask you this. Is a premium car wash going to make that thing look like a Ferrari? Someone say no. Is a premium plus car wash going to erase all of the scratches that Pastor Tom put on my car every time he gets mad at me? Someone say no. Absolutely not. And yet, for some reason, whenever I go to it, I always see that big blow dryer at the end of the car wash, thinking to myself, man, but if I just have 30 more seconds of that, then my life will be a little bit more meaningful. Now, maybe you've done that, maybe you haven't done that, but to a certain extent, we've all felt that in some way, shape, or form, because we've all thought to ourselves, I mean, why get the EX when I can get the LX? Why get the normal doorbell when I can get the doorbell that spies on everybody in the entire world? Why get the small tub of popcorn when I can buy myself a heart attack for 50 cents more? Let me show you a picture of what my wife got me for Father's Day. This is a picture my wife got me for Father's Day. Anybody know what the iGrill is? Go ahead and raise your hands if y'all know what the iGrill is. Okay, sounds like you don't know what that is. That right there is a remote sensing Bluetooth me thermometer where I can get the temperature on my phone. Do you know why I need that thing in my life? Because obviously I am too lazy to get up and check the temperature myself. And yet I thought to myself, man, if I had that, my life would be so complete. My life would be so happy. Brought to you by capitalism, everybody. See, here's the thing. I love capitalism, and I think capitalism is great. But at the same time, capitalism understands something about the human condition. Capitalism understands something about human psychology. And that is the fact that inside of the human heart, there is this deep, deep hole. There is this sense of darkness, and there is this sense of emptiness that exists within inside of us. And if we can just get a meat thermometer, if we can just get a nicer car wash, if we could get a nicer car, if we could upgrade my spouse, if I can do X, Y, Z, well then all of a sudden, that's what it is that'll make me happy. What you're going to find is that there's someone in the Bible who thought exactly the same way. Funny thing is, we don't even really know what her name is. The only thing that we know her by is this moniker that she's called the woman at the well. In John chapter 4, if you don't know, I don't know if you know too much about her story, but we find her in John chapter 4. And let's go ahead and put up the Bible map. But in the Bible map, what you're going to find is that Jesus is in the southern region of Judea. He's coming from the capital city of Jerusalem, and now he wants to travel to the northern area of Galilee. Now, what you and I both know is that the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. But a straight line would take him through the area of Samaria. I'm a poet, and I don't even know it. Now, what's going to be the most convenient route geographically is also going to be the most inconvenient route culturally. You know why I say that? It's because in 772 BC, the king of Assyria invaded the northern territory of Israel that we're talking about. And he came up with a very interesting plan to maintain control over the people. And that is that he flooded the area with Gentiles into an almost all Jewish area. He shuffled the deck. He intermingled and encouraged them to intermarry with each other because his goal was to breed the Israelites right out of existence. Now, you have to understand that this isn't a new tactic. This is something that has been used throughout time. Because if you've ever seen the movie Braveheart, what you will find is that's exactly what the English tried to do to the Scottish people by using that law that they instituted called prima nocte, right? And so back then, what you will find is that a country was not only defined by its boundaries and its borders, but a country was defined by the culture of its people. So in that middle area of Samaria, you had this entire race of half-breeds. And because of that, the Jewish people hated the Samaritans, and the Samaritan people hated the Jewish people. Okay, now we find ourselves in John chapter 4. If you didn't join us last week for John chapter 3, I'm going to go ahead and catch you up with everything. But in John chapter 3, what you will find, John chapter 3 and 4, they go together. John chapter 3 and 4 are so beautifully contrasted with one another because John wants to write into the story this variety of people that Jesus dealt with and the variety of people that Jesus gave his life for. Because in John chapter 3, Jesus talks with a man named Nicodemus, and we know this, that he's one of the religious leaders. So he is not only a religious leader, he is a leader of leaders. He is the elite of the elite. Now, all of a sudden, we get to John chapter 4, and we find that that is not the case. All of a sudden, Jesus is now interacting with somebody who is not only from an inferior race, he is interacting with someone from an inferior gender. I mean, that is what they considered women back then. In fact, I think it's interesting how in the Middle East, even to this day, men and women live largely separate lives. I mean, I had a pastor friend of mine who went on a missions trip to the Middle East, and he was in a restaurant where the Arab men were all eating in one room, and the Arab women and the women and children were all in another room. And one of the Muslim wives came over into the male room, and you know what he said the man did? The husband just went like this. He went like this. You know, and my pastor friend was like, "What is this? What kind of power does this man have in his finger?" Because the moment he went like this, the wife just turned around and went right into the other room. And so I tried that with my wife. My wife came up to me asking me, "Well, who are we going to have for Father's Day?" When I just went like this. And she was like, "What's wrong with your finger? And why are you doing that?" Men, don't try that. It only works in the Middle East for some reason. I don't understand. So here we have Nicodemus. Here we have the woman at the well. Not only is she from an inferior race, not only is she from an inferior gender, but guess what? She has lived largely an inferior life. Because what we're going to find out is that she's not only had 5 husbands, but she's now working on her 6th. That's not even all that acceptable in our culture. Think about the culture that they lived in back then. Verse 4 is going to tell us this, that here she is drawing water all by herself in the heat of the day. You know, all y'all women don't do anything alone. You know what I'm saying? You go to the bathroom in herds. And so here you have this woman who, in the hottest part of the day, is drawing water all by herself. Do you know why? Because every other woman in town thinks she's you go ahead and fill in the blank. They don't want to do anything with her. They don't want their husbands to do anything with her. They don't want their children to do anything with her. And chapter 3, chapter 4 are so beautifully contrasted with one another. Do you know why? Because in John chapter 3, it tells us that you are never so good that you do not need the forgiveness of God. But you know what today's story is going to teach us? It's going to teach us this, that you have never been so bad that you are outside of the reach of the forgiveness of God. If you have your Bibles today, would you turn to John chapter 4, verse 4? John chapter 4, verse 4. And whether you're sitting here or whether you're sitting out in the cafe, would y'all stand with me as we honor the reading of God's word this morning? John chapter 4, verse 4. And I love the way that John starts out this story, because he didn't just happen to bump into this woman, but what we find is that Jesus is on a mission from God. Verse 4 says this, now he didn't just, but he had to go through Samaria. He was a man on a mission. This is exactly what the Lord wanted. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Very influential, very significant place. And Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. And it was about noon. Verse 7, when a Samaritan woman came in to draw water, and Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? Now, this is weird. Honestly, this is nasty. Because how many of you guys like to share cups? Anybody? I don't even like to share cups with my own children. If they're under 5, they don't just drink drinks, they leave you gifts. So I don't like that. But all of a sudden, Jesus is going to drink from this woman's water? Whoa, crazy. Okay, verse 9, the Samaritan woman said to him, whoa, hey, wait a second. You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Verse 10, Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him and he would have given you. Would y'all say that with me? He would have given you living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with. You got no rope. You got no bucket. What are you talking about? The well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his flocks and his herds? In other words, this is pretty important. What makes you think that your water is any more important than this thing right here? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Before y'all sit down, would you turn to 3 people and say, Happy Father's Day? I love this conversation. And before I even go on with what I was going to talk about, one of the things that I love about this verse is you find that the destination that Jesus is moving towards is actually Galilee, but he's allowing himself to be divinely interrupted on the journey to make sure that he's sharing his life with somebody else. So here's a question that I have for you. On your way to your destination, I know that today is Father's Day. I know it's all about you. I know it's all about your husband. I know it's all about your dad. But at the same time, here's a question I have for you, that if you want to be like Jesus, will you allow yourself today to have your spiritual radar up, asking God, is there a divine appointment that you have for me today in the middle of my destination, in the middle of all of this, where you want me to not only share water with somebody, but to share living water? Because that's where Jesus is at. Jesus is on his way to Christmas. Jesus is on his way to Father's Day. Jesus is on the way to something else. There is something else on his mind, and yet he allows himself to be divinely interrupted in this moment in order to share not just water, but living water with somebody else. And so they get into this conversation about water and living water, and she asks a very honest question. She says this, Jesus, I don't get it. How is your water any more important than the water right here? Because this water keeps me alive. I mean, we almost forget the importance of water in Southern California because when we have an extreme drought, our lawns turn brown. When they have an extreme drought, people die. So she wants to know, how is the water that you have any more important than the water that I have right here? Because this water keeps me alive. This water keeps me satisfied. This water keeps me full. And this water makes me happy. Now, for a moment, if you want to track with me, let's talk about the water that we're drinking here in Southern California. And guess what? It's not called tap water. It's not called Evian. It's not called Arrowhead. You know what it's called? It's called this right here. Is it up there? Would y'all read it with me? It's called the American Dream. That's the water we're drinking. That's the water we're selling. And guess what? We're drinking it right up. The American Dream. After all, that's why my parents came to this country as immigrants, because they wanted to chase that thing right there, the American dream. Because you know what the American dream is all about? You know what the American dream tells you? It tells you this, that as long as you own your own house, you have 2.3 kids, a dog named Spot, and a white picket fence, and a remote-censored Bluetooth meat thermometer, then you will be happy in life. But the question I have for you is this, that when we all have so much, and when we are all so affluent, then why is it that we are all the most miserable and the most medicated society in the history of the world. Well, maybe it's because we're drinking from the wrong well. But we don't seem to think that, do we? We just seem to think, man, but I just need to drink more. I'm thirsty, so I need water, right? That's what we think. I'm thirsty. I need water. So we drink, and we drink, and we drink, and we drink, and we drink. Without realizing, again, maybe we're just drinking from the wrong well. Let me illustrate this to you by asking you a couple questions. Maybe this will help kind of clear it up for a second. Question number one is this. How much salt water would a person need to drink in order to quench their thirst? I'll give you a moment to take out your phones. You might have to use a calculator for this one. No? Okay. Question number two is this. How much stuff would a person need to buy in order to win someone else's approval? How much would you need to buy to win somebody else's approval? You're like, I get it now. No, that's like apples and oranges, Mark. I mean, buying stuff and winning somebody else's approval, both those things don't go together. And yet, you and I have seen people do it all the time, haven't we? You might have seen that person in the mirror this morning. Question number three goes something like this. Let's say that my wife took a credit card to Macy's for a day of unlimited shopping. Ladies, I want you to imagine this in your mind for a second. Would that be enough? If she went to Macy's for a day of unlimited, like she could get all the outdoor furniture that she wanted, and she could get everything that she wanted for the children, and she could get all the dresses and the shoes and the diamonds that she could possibly get her hands on, would that be enough? I don't know, because we're never going to find out. I saw an ad recently, and there was an ad for a sex therapist in Los Angeles that read this, that if you are not completely satisfied with your sex life, then give us a call. Isn't that a brilliant ad? You know why that's such a brilliant ad? Because who is ever completely satisfied with anything? I told an illustration during the second service, and they didn't get it, but y'all look smarter than they are, so I'm going to tell it to you. I mean, that's part of the reason why C.S. Lewis gives this illustration in the book Mere Christianity, where he says, you know that we're only hungrier for the things of this world. You know that even our normal sexual desires have overflown its bounds. You know how? Because nobody ever goes to a seedy nightclub in Los Angeles where they have a pork chop on a plate going like this. Da-na, da, da-na-na. You guys are smarter. I like that. You know, if you think it's a crazy idea, it wasn't my illustration to begin with, okay? Now, the funny thing is this. We never, in all of our hunger, in all of our broken relationships, in all of our debt, in all of our boredom, in all of our watching TV, in pursuing vacation after vacation after vacation, for some reason, we never seem to come to the conclusion that we're drinking out of the wrong well, do we? We only seem to come to this conclusion that if I just drink more, and 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 if I just drink more, then that's what's going to make me happy. See, and it's in the middle of all of that darkness, all of that loneliness, and all of that debt that Jesus wants to make this point right here. Just because you're alive doesn't mean that you're living. See, and that's where some of you are at today, right? You're alive, but you are not living because you've never tasted the living water that Jesus is talking about. You don't know who you are. You don't know why you are. You don't know where you've come. You don't know where you're going. And because you've never tasted this living water, it leaves you with this insatiable itch in life, thinking to yourself that if you just itch and itch and itch and itch, that the itch will go away. But when you have a mosquito bite, when you itch it, it doesn't itch less, does it? You itch that mosquito bite, and guess what? It gets itchier, and it gets itchier, and it gets itchier, and it gets itchier. And all of a sudden, what Jesus wants to do is he wants to come into this woman's life and give her what it is, not that what she thinks she wants, but what it is that she really wants. And she says this, well, hold on a second here. You don't have a rope or a bucket, and this well is very deep. Oh, man, it is deeper than you think, isn't it? This well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? And Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water is going to be thirsty again. Bar none. You get drunk, you're going to be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give him would y'all say it with me? Will never thirst. Will never lack joy. Will never lack purpose. Will never lack hope. Indeed, the water that I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. And that's what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, go ahead, try and drink what this world is serving. Go ahead and drink and drink and drink and get so drunk that you will forget the problems of the day. The problem is that you're going to wake up and you're going to want another drink in the morning. Go ahead. Go to the nicest of restaurants. Treat yourself to the nicest of vacations. And the problem is that next year, you're always going to feel like you have to outdo that vacation, and you're going to end up just in deeper debt at the end of all of that. He says, go ahead. Spend millions of dollars on plastic surgery and makeup. The problem is that 5 years later, you're going to look just as old as you did before. Right? See, and maybe the reason why you go through relationship after relationship after relationship, and maybe the reason why you go through husband after husband after husband is this very principle that we're talking about right here. To illustrate this point, I'm going to swallow this fish. No, actually, I'm joking. I'm not going to do that. Okay. To illustrate this point, I'm going to take this fish right here, and fishy, 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 come here. Fishy, fishy, fishy. Fishy, come here, fishy. Fishy, fishy. Where's the fishy? Oh, man, this is going to take me forever. Fishy, fishy. Okay, good. Now, I'm really nervous because if I take this fish out of water, what you'll find is that this fish is dying right now. I can see the headlines right now, right? Pastor sacrifices animal on stage. Okay, here we go. This is going to be an awesome day in the life of our church, right? Now, if I take this fish out of water, what is it doing? It's flapping around. It's suffocating. Literally, it is like dying in my hands right now. Now, is the answer for me to give this thing a big screen TV? Is that going to solve its problem? Is the answer for me to give this thing a nice European vacation where it has like all expenses paid at the Fairmont? Someone say, no. Is the answer for me to put this thing on a beach with an umbrella and a Corona in its hand? No, it's not, right? In other words, is the answer for me to give this fish more air? Everyone said no. What's the answer? For me to put this fish back where it belongs. Here's the point that I'm trying to make today. That if you feel this sense of loneliness inside of you, that if you feel this sense of discouragement and depression, this itch, this insatiable itch that will not go away inside of your heart, do you know what? God is the one who put that in your heart. Do you know why? To prove to you that you have not been created for this world. And that no amount of me giving you more air, no amount of me giving you more vacation, no amount of me buying you nicer cars is going to itch that scratch that you have right on you. But you know what? That you have been created. You have been created for another world. That you have been created for a relationship with God. That literally when God created you with a missing hole inside of your heart. And you and I, you know what we try and do? We try and throw husbands into that hole. We try and throw drugs into that hole. We try and pour Netflix into that hole just because we're so bored and purposeless and we don't know what to do with our lives. But God is saying, every time you feel that hole, it's just a reminder that that this world is not your home. That you weren't created for this world, but that you were created for a relationship with me. And that itch, restlessness that you have in your heart, will never go away until you find your rest in God. So look at what it is. Look at what it is that he says. Because he says right here, but whoever drinks the water I give will never thirst. So you know what this woman says? This woman says this right here in verse 15. I give up. I give up. She says, Sir, give me this water. Give it to me. Now, this is what I believe, even more so as a pastor than I ever did before, that I am, every time I see somebody, like that baptism video, every time I see somebody give their life to Christ, or every time in a service I see people give their life to Christ, the novelty of that does not wear off on me. You know why? Because I want you to think about the most impossible change of mind that you can see in a person. Maybe it's this. I want you to think of the most ardent political party, the strongest politically minded person that you've ever met in your entire life. You know what I'm talking about? Like crazy Facebook post person. Whether they're Republican or Democrat, I don't care who they are. We all know crazy political person. Imagine that person all of a sudden one day saying, you know what, I've been wrong, and now I'm a other party. You would be like, whoa, that is amazing. That instance right there is absolutely nothing compared to the miracle that God does in somebody's heart to change their worldview completely and totally upside down. And that is exactly what happened with this woman right here. Because what does she say? She says, Sir, give me this water. Why? You know what? I wish she would use a different reason. As a pastor, I would hope she would say, Lord, I finally see that you are the Messiah, and so I want to accept you into my heart. That's what I wish she would say. She didn't say that. You know, she doesn't say, you know what, you are God, and now I want to love you more than anyone else. Guess what? She doesn't say that either. You know what she says? She, in the honesty of her situation, she says this right here. Sir, give me this water so I won't get thirsty. And I won't have to come back to this God-forsaken life that I have to live every single day to keep coming here to draw water all by myself while every woman in the village, every man in the village, and every child in the village looks at me in a certain way. I'm done with it. I don't want that anymore. And now, if you're the answer, I guess I want you. Now, that's not a great pastor's answer, but that's why you came to Christ in the beginning. And that's how I came to Christ in the beginning too, isn't it? I mean, that's almost like Jesus saying this. Jesus saying this, come to me and you'll never have to drive on the 91 freeway again. Some of you would say, I don't care what Christians have done to me in the past. I don't care what questions I have about God. As long as I don't have to drive on that hellish road again, I'm in. I'm a Christian. Man, the 91 freeway is so bad it could make Mother Teresa cuss. And this is every day of this woman's life. This is her commute every single day. And she is sick of it. She is scratched and she's scratched, her arms bloody. And she finally understands. And she says, Jesus, if you are this living water, then show me where this living water is. She's like, I'm in. And maybe that's exactly where you're at today. Maybe finally, after all of these years, you've come to the conclusion, after all of your promotions and all of your money and all of your vacations, that none of those things satisfy. And then maybe instead of just becoming a minimalist, you know, somebody came to me after service, second service, and they were like, oh, I totally get what you're saying, that all we have to do is drop all this stuff in our life. No. That's not what I'm saying. You drop all this stuff in your life, guess what? You got an even bigger void. That void can only be filled by Jesus. And maybe you're here today saying, I finally see that. And I'm in. And if that's you, I want to go ahead and lead you in a prayer today. Why don't you bow your heads with me?